Hello once again everyone, and it has been a very long time since I came back to the series, but now Yeehaw is done, and I can breathe again, so I'm going to try and pick back up where I've left off, so thank you all for being patient. We're going to get into the short riposte of Seidler, his German saber manual. So these are pretty straightforward. We went over the long parry table, and it was just great fun back and forth that took forever. With the short riposte, the idea is that you're only doing them if you were mid-cut when another cut comes in. So, generally speaking, if Eric and I are engaged against each other at this sort of distance where he's just cutting initially at me, all my long parries, etc., make the most sense because it's keeping me safe and keeping me away. Not that I couldn't choose to do a short riposte, but in particular, there are two things that he mentions very early on to consider. So, for example, I will throw an axle at you, right? If we're both here and I throw an axle and he does his long parry, right? Life is great, grand, and wonderful, he's far away from me. If he's doing the short parry version, which looks the same but is a little bit closer to the body, right? That opens it up for me to do a double cut very easily because we're at long distance. It also means if he does that shortening again, he does mention the idea of turning the blade over, which I will be talking about in a follow-up video. But basically, short parries at long distance just open up my ability to do more mutations. So, where you really want to be using the short parries and what he says to do is you are mid-action, someone is throwing back at you, and so you pull back from having cut. So we'll go through that kind of slowly, and then we'll show some a little more realistic speed. So for sake of ease, we're both going to take the Flachlage. So for this, especially we'll start at the top. All of your inside ones are pretty much exclusively going to end up hitting Axel. So I throw, for example, a Shota. It really doesn't matter. And as I'm throwing that, he chooses to ignore it and go for my pop. So I pull my hilt back. The idea is that since my tip is already committed, it's a lot easier for me to pull my hilt back to me in kind of this whip motion, which is basically how all your short parries end up working, as opposed to your long parries, which would be moving the tip around you. So, I throw my cut, he throws at my head, and then just return with Axel either to the arm or to the head. Kind of depends upon your range. Generally speaking, if I was close enough to be hitting him with my Shota, I'm probably lunging, and I may even be doing this mid-lunge as I will show now. And thus I end up hitting within his guard. You'll see this a lot from a bunch of different good sabers. It's a good way of baiting, catching, hitting. Now again, you can also target the arm. Next is going to be my Shota, which is this. So it's just at a nice little 45. Exact same idea. Flachlage, I'm throwing Shota, he throws Shota, so I pull back. And this is where things get interesting. If he cuts all the way through, no problem. Hit Axel, same as you're used to. But there is also mention that you can cut over or within the blade. So I'm going to lunge a little deep in, so we're going to get relatively close to each other. Here, as soon as that sort of stops, there's nothing stopping me from cutting behind his blade. And since he's extending a good cut at me, I'm safe and clear to do so. So what I would recommend, if you're fighting someone that likes to through cut very hard, then weather the storm and then hit them in the opening. If you're fighting someone that likes to extend very precise cuts, go ahead and cut behind their blade. So Eric, I'm going to have you do those two real quick if you wouldn't mind. He's going to throw a through cut on the first one. So I'm mid-cut, weather, fire. And you can also put that in a bunch of other places. Now he's someone who's a little more precise. So I'm mid-cut, and so I attack within the blade since he is stopped. Different strokes for different folks, pun intended. Now, next up is going to be Brust. Second burst, same as first. Flachlage, mid-cut, Brust, Axel. That was more of a Seidler in my part. I'll do better. So Brust. And again, you could go within the blade if you had to, and since that's targeting real deep, that may happen quite a bit, so the hilt stayed together as I hit. You may notice with my Axel, I'm mostly targeting about here on the cheekbone. That's about where I like to fire. Any higher, if they're doing weird stuff, you run the possibility of missing. Lower is fine, but if I can get the head, why would I settle for an arm? Really, it's only Kopf that I find I hit the arm a lot. Okay, so that's all relatively straightforward. What about our other side? These are all super simple. So from Axel to Seidler to Hufte, they're all just returned with a Kopf because you're in and outside guard, so it just returns straight down the line. So for this, I will be cutting on the Axel line. He fires a cut, I catch it, straight up the line. Doesn't matter if you're on their blade or not. Here's that again, this time with a lunge. Up, hey, right? Nice and fun. This one you want to make sure is going straight down the line. That one wasn't perfect because once I've caught this, if there's any sort of angle, I run into this. If I take that time to make sure I'm going forward, my tip gets the necessary velocity to go over. And also, it should be noted that while we're not going to worry about it, there is a lovely thrust here that could also be used. Again, I'll save that for a future thing. So here's that done better on my part. So let's go outside. So I'm throwing, up, hey, nice and good. Same idea if he is going Seidler on me. So for example, for this I'll be mid-Kopf, right? Nice and up, right? Nice and fun. And then same idea if he was doing Hofte, I'll do the same setup. Up, hey, you know, it's there, especially I lower my body. Much like the inside guard third position, it's just your outside guard, like extra squatted position. Because there's not a lot of point in trying to just drop your hilt. Even if you get the angle right, it's still dicey. Lower yourself all the way. Speaking of which, we now have two weird ones. So, too long didn't read. All your inside, return with an axle, with one exception. All your outside, return with a Kopf. Easy day. As far as the last two, we have Tiefe. Tiefe is returned with a Schulter cut. And that's a bit of a strange one because your Tiefe Kurzstärkung is here. So you're essentially going to just be pushing the sword forward a bit like, well, it's a push cut. It's almost like a thrust. The reason I believe this is because this one is not meant to go through. If he's throwing Tiefe at me when I am mid-cut, he's probably not targeting my arm. I mean, of course he could be, but he'd be retreating with it, right? That's a whole different kettle of fish, and I should be able to perform a long parry, which I'll get into in a second. More likely, if he's throwing Tiefe when I'm in the midst of throwing an attack, he's probably trying to hit my body. He may even be trying to stop cut me. As such, I'm going to end up close to him, and his blade has a high chance of getting bound on me. So again, I'm going to lower my body as I throw this. So Flachlage, I'm mid-cut. I bind on him. Well, if I try to turn this way, that takes too much time and he's covered and it puts him through Kopf. Tiefe, there we go. I don't have room to go straight forward because again, he can just lift his hilt up and life is great. So instead, from this, I push it forward, kind of as a thrust, kind of as a shota, which gives me that nice shot. Kind of depends on exactly where you jam him. I jammed him relatively late, so he was in a better spot. But here's that again. I'm mid-cut, jam it, there's your push. And really just turning it into that little guy is a fantastic technique. It's something I am personally working on doing more. I think there are a lot of moments where the guards are kind of open and just pushing forward that quick little push cut does you quite a good favor. But I digress. So, okay, cool. What about if he was targeting the arm, right? And this isn't explicitly said. In fact, you don't go over the Kurtz version of Bauch. I mean, you go over it, but you don't go over it in the table. So what do? In my opinion, it functions exactly the same as the half circle guard or squadron guard or whatever else you want to call it. The idea is if he was going for my wrist, and only if he was going for my wrist, do I then choose to swirl my tip. So for example, I'll go Kopf, right? I was mid-Kopf at him when he tries to snipe my wrist, so I then swirl through getting this parry. There's no immediate riposte off of it though because of the position I'm in. What would be best for me to see is if he's going to try and double cut me. Catch, fire. And that's how I find that usually plays out. So, all that is to say, the short riposte. What are they for? They are for when you are mid-action and someone chooses to cut at you. This can also be when you are doing a provocation. So anything that gets him to go in, that's your time to use your bait. They are close and flat to you. You do not want these to be out in space. That provides the opportunity to do a double cut at the wrist. You want them nice and tight, so you're just weathering the storm wherever you need to be. Long parries, on the other hand, are for when you have that space necessary, because at the end of the day, this is about turning you into a good cutter that can protect themselves, especially like on horseback and stuff like that, not turning you into a tricky fighter, though I will get into that next video. So, thank you very much, Eric. Thank you all very much for watching. We will be going over some other fun things another time.